I know you get a lot of tornadoes here, especially the last couple of years. I've storm chased here quite a bit in Indiana. I was chasing the Henryville Day down in southern Indiana. I did miss a lot of those in northern Indiana last year, but I was in Illinois during a few of those big events. But you definitely had a lot of tornadoes up here, and I look forward to sharing with you what it's like inside of a tornado and the art of the tornado intersect. Here is the Dominator 3. Back behind me, and we were supposed to be driving that up here, but we blew a bunch of airbags last week in that, so the Dominator 3 is torn apart right now. But we've got the Dominator 4 out there, the Subaru, and that's basically named the Dominator 4 after a golf ball because, as you can see, it's covered in a bunch of hail dents. But I wanted to start this presentation with an intercept video. This was in northern Alabama on May 20 earlier this year. And the reason we built the Dominator is to survive the suction vortices inside of tornadoes. And it's possible that they could ramp the winds up to 2 to 4 times that of the main tornado. And this one was in northern Alabama, and it was rated an EF2. And the suction vortex peeled off the northern part of the tornado and hit the front side of the Dominator with 200-mile-per-hour winds. And we had a northerly 135-mile-per-hour wind on the back side of the Dominator, and that spun us around about 180 degrees. And here you can see the air cannon. We use that to shoot sensors into the tornado, and they have miniaturized sensors that measure GPS and also the thermodynamics inside of a tornado. And you can actually see the parachute pop inside of that suction vortex and lift up through the tornado and up into the mesocyclone.
I'm launching!
Here, hit it back to me. Yep. Oh! There you can see it cut right through the core. Hit the Dominator and spun it about 180 degrees. There you can see it's almost as if the air cannon launch fired up that vortex. And we calculated that it was moving at 60 miles an hour. You can see I'm a little sensitive to adrenaline. I have a cup of coffee and this is what happens. But I actually thought we were airborne for a split second inside of that tornado. The vortex was spinning so rapidly that it felt like we went around a couple of times. And you feel a big time pressure fall inside of the tornado as well that can even blow your eardrums out. So you can see part of the door is hanging off. We had the windows down in the Dominator 3 for this intercept. And I was trying to get up to that intersection a little bit to the east. I thought it was a pretty weak tornado at the time and that we could handle it in the Dominator, but I didn't have a chance to put the spikes into the ground. We have 2 spikes in the front of the Dominator 3, and I press a switch down and those go into the pavement even and keep us from sliding around. But if that tornado was a little bit bigger or lasted a little longer, I think that it could have rolled the Dominator in the ditch there, or maybe even gone airborne. But there you can see it moving off to the northeast, and it's those suction vortices, the miniature tornadoes that spin around inside of the vortex that can ramp the wind even up to the speed of sound. It can even be 400 or 500 miles per hour in some of the stronger tornadoes on the small scales, and that is definitely enough to even roll the Dominator potentially. And it can ramp an EF1 or an EF2 tornado into an EF3 or an EF5 tornado in terms of winds in the blink of an eye. And that's exactly what happened with that suction vortex. And we do have some breaking news in the weather world. We have our first EF5 since 2013, and this happened on June 20 this year in eastern North Dakota, and it was just upgraded a couple of weeks ago after the fact, and that was based on a train car that was fully loaded and thrown 475 feet. And the engineers calculated that the winds were up to 230 miles an hour to roll that train car. And it also had a sandpapering effect on the vegetation in the area. But you can only rate a tornado up to EF4 based on vegetation, so they definitely needed that train car there. But this is a picture from a doorbell camera in Enderlin, North Dakota, looking northwest at the EF5. And that's all rounded, smooth cloud matter. The tornado is actually inside of that. There's a pipe of low pressure called a dynamic pipe, and that's the tornado within there. But these were caused by 2 renegade supercells that developed in eastern North Dakota ahead of a derecho, and the southern of those 2 supercells produced the EF5, and you can see it had that deviant motion as well, turning off to the north like that. And these are the worst tornadoes because they just drill into the ground, they're almost stationary, and they're separating from the mesocyclone when they turn north like that. There's a rear flank downdraft on the backside of the supercell that cuts into the mesocyclone and will choke the tornado off from the main supercell, and then it'll do that hook-like pattern, and that happened right over, very, very close to Enderlin, North Dakota on June 20. And we were chasing the northern storm on this day. This is near Spiritwood, North Dakota.
We can go back to it. We can go back to it if we want.
And we intercepted this tornado when it first formed. And then I was a little spooked by that suction vortex incident, so we got in the outer circulation. We ran out of rockets by this point in the season on June 20th. But these are the strongest of tornadoes when they take on that barrel shape like this. And this one also had deviant motion. Initially, it went off to the southeast. And there was a family in a farmhouse just to the north of our position here that was watching our live stream from the Dominator. We were parked right in front of their house, and they saw the tornado move southeast away from their house initially, and then they saw it plant like this, turn off to the north, did that deviant motion, and was heading straight for their house. So they ran into the basement, got into a room, and the whole entire family barricaded themselves against the door. And they heard their house shred over top of them. They had glass coming underneath the door. But right after this, we ended the chase, did search and rescue, and pulled them out of the basement, and they were totally unharmed. But their house was destroyed. But here you can see the tornado reaching peak intensity as it was turning left. So this was separating from the mesocyclone or the supercell, and moving very slowly. So if we got inside of this tornado with the Dominator, we'd probably be in there for like 20 minutes in that tornado. But the family was just to the north, watching the live stream, and saw the tornado coming toward their house. So they took shelter in the basement. And then we were standing in the rubble of the house looking off to the south, and you saw the southern supercell develop right near sunset. And that's the one that produced the EF5 tornado at about 11 p.m. that night. This tornado was in 2023, and I was in the Dominator 4 in this one. I was in my Subaru. But this tornado also had deviant motion, and you can watch the left edge of the tornado. If you're just north of it, and it's moving from west to east, and then suddenly it stops and then turns north, you can see that the left edge basically stops moving. But if I was in the Dominator 3, I just would have intercepted this one.
The tornado is now fully mature and planted.
See, I'm just north of it. Tornado's moving west to east here.
Enhanced footage reveals a concerning sign.
And anytime you see those horizontal vortices feeding into the tornado, you know it's a really powerful tornado. The updraft inside is what excites those noodle-like vortices that feed into them. But I'm watching the left edge of the tornado. It's still moving west to east. But eventually in the town of Cole, Oklahoma, it just stops and turns due north, heading straight for our location.
I remember this.
I had an AccuWeather photographer with me at the time, and this was his first tornado, and he went through the whole chase without saying a word. His wife was pretty mad at me after this storm chase. But you can see the left edge basically stopped right there. This farmhouse gets completely destroyed. And you can turn it up a little bit to hear the roar of the tornado. It wipes out that transformer, and then I knew it was expanding and turning off to the north. Well, it's basically in the tornado right there.
Appears to have not moved. But this is a dangerous illusion.
When it wipes out all those farmhouses there.
It's indeed moving at 20 miles an hour.
If I was in the Dominator 3, I just would have held my position here and intercepted the tornado, shot some rockets into it.
Keeps close tabs on it.
But I was in the Dominator 4, the Subaru, so I put it in reverse. Got out of there when those power lines were exploding, but that barn got completely destroyed.
To fall back. Note the white building here, with the silver tank in front of it, and the gray silo as well.
We're basically in the tornado right here, and it expanded into a wedge over the road. You can see all that debris going around. And so, but if I would have held my position there, I could have intercepted that tornado directly. And if we're in the Dominator 3, we put spikes into even the road surface, drop the outer armor flush to the ground, and then that would make it possible to survive that. But look at the suction vortices that developed with the Tornado 2.
On the gray side.
And this was an EF3 with winds of about 170 miles an hour. So the suction vortices in there probably had winds of 400 plus.
The multiple vortices continue shredding.
And sadly, there was a fatality in town here, but a lot of homes were damaged on the right. So we shifted into search and rescue, pulled some people out of their shelters in there. But you can even see the collar cloud wrapping around the backside of the tornado. And this one just continued across the road, moved off to the due north. And it produced about 15 tornadoes, that supercell. So it was a quick cycler. It would produce one tornado, it would separate from the storm and move off to the due north. Then it would produce another one that would do the same thing, and it just kept doing that over a dozen times throughout the night in Oklahoma. But it's these suction vortices that we're really interested in with the Dominator 3. This was in Greenfield, Iowa last year, and this is a high-end DF4. And we were supposed to be chasing this in the Dominator 3. We were driving up there, and our turbo blew out on the way in northeastern Kansas. So we had to get a rental car on this day. And we definitely couldn't have handled that tornado in a rental car, but those vortices probably would have even rolled the Dominator 3 potentially. But this was captured by drone. I was just north of it. It was moving at 60 miles an hour. We launched the drone, and then it orbited the tornado, and we had to find it in a farmer's field after that. But you can see the sinking motion wrapping around the south side of the tornado, taking out those wind turbines. They caught on fire and everything out there as well. But what causes these suction vortices to form is when a tornado gets so strong, the wind carves into the vortex toward the low pressure, and it splits it into those individual vortices, and you can have 3 to 5 of them inside of the tornado. You can see the condensation explode there. That's because those are pipes of low pressure in there, and the atmosphere more easily condenses with low pressure. But after this, I took the rental car back into western Oklahoma, intercepted a tornado with it. A cedar tree came through the windshield, and then I went down to the Texas Panhandle and blew all the windows out in softball-size hail. And I'm actually banned by all major rental car companies right now, so they started coming after me. It started with a Hertz attack. But I've destroyed, I think, over 100 rental cars over the years from when I was working with AccuWeather a lot during those years. I was getting into a lot of hail in the high plains, and some of the biggest hail I've seen are 7-inch diameter hailstones in Piedmont, Oklahoma in 2012. And I've seen a lot of big hail in eastern Wyoming, including a flying cow up there that I'm going to show you a video of shortly. But this shows a plume of condensation coming off the buildings there. That is as insulation and sand is getting injected into the tornado, and that's cloud condensation nuclei, so it causes those rooster tails of condensation coming off the homes. But thankfully that would narrowly miss the suction vortices inside of there. And not all tornadoes have multiple vortices, but it does seem like most tornadoes at some point in their life cycle do go through a multiple vortex phase. And this is definitely a problem that we have with the Dominators, because the Dominator 3 is not a guaranteed survival in the strongest of tornadoes with like 300-mile-per-hour winds. But we want to build a Dominator 5 that's shaped like a flying saucer, that has a ring of spikes around the base of it, and we think that that could survive a DF5 tornado with a slightly lower profile design. So I actually have to eyeball the tornadoes when we're about to intercept them and make sure that we can handle them. But these suction vortices can ramp even a weaker tornado up to an EF3 or even an EF5 really quickly. And this was in 2007. This was the first time that Joel Taylor and I, my late storm chasing partner, and I saw the suction vortices up close.
Wow!
And you can play this one a little louder.
Turn off the windshield wipers! Turn off the wipers!
You can see a kink just above the ground in the vortex. It's just one vortex right here, but it splits into a multiple vortex phase when it passes to our east.
Oh my God. Okay, stop, we're good. Oh, no! Jesus Christ!
Joel had the doors open and put it in reverse and almost took out my legs. That's the last time he let me drive, too, after that. But there you can see the tornado shift into a multiple vortex phase. It interacts with the friction of the earth, and that causes the wind to carve in toward the tornado and splits it up into those little vortices. And you can barely see them with the naked eye. They're moving so quickly in that tornado.
I got it!
But the roar really ramped up because those suction vortices increase the wind speeds at ground level. And it's surrounded by a sheath of sinking air.
Hear that? Oh no, there's structures! Oh no!
So you'll see it when it hits a tree, it flattens the tree into the ground and then rips it right out of the ground when it's hit by a suction vortex. But that sheath of sinking air is why we use rockets now. We shoot rockets to get through the sinking air, then the parachute pops and it's lifted up through the tornado. But it took us like 15 years to figure that out. And this is a picture of the rental car that I used on the Greenfield, Iowa chase. It had about 17 miles when I first picked it up, but you can see all the windows are blown out. You can see the spider crack on the right that you can barely see in that lighting, but that's where the cedar tree came through the car. But when I returned it at the rental car place at the airport, one of the sons of the employees there was a fan of Team Dominator and posted that to Reddit, and it went viral. And that's when that company came after me for that rental car. But I did have the loss damage waiver on all of them as well, so there's some fine print in there. But none of it was purposeful. I was just trying to get through the hail core to get to the south side of the storm so that I could see the tornado and intercept it. This is one in 2018 in eastern Wyoming, and this is what a hail core looks like. If you're ever driving out on the road here in Indiana and you see something like that coming at you, then you want to pull the vehicle off to the side of the road, let the hail go by, save the rental car at any cost. But in this one I had a Nissan Sentra rental car, and I was trying to get through that hail core to get the tornado on the other side, but I couldn't quite get through this one. So I pointed the rear of the rental car into the wind, and it blew out all the back windows, which is a good technique that you can use. But I've seen some of the biggest hail in eastern Wyoming and down in the Texas Panhandle. Here it comes. A lot of times you see cars going the other direction, flashing their emergency lights. That's when you know you're about to get some action. But I do love hail cores as well. You can see a total blowout of the back window. Here's the one in the Texas Panhandle. This is that Expedition. And anytime you see that ribbon of dirt on the horizon, you're about to get hammered by hail as well. And they have a downdraft that comes around the backside of the mesocyclone and actually causes the hail to fall faster than terminal velocity. So I put gas station sunglasses on, that keeps the glass shards out of the eyes. And then I put the visor down and try to deflect them into the floorboard. But when you're driving toward the hail, it also increases the relative fall speed. So whatever you see in these videos is how not to stay safe, usually around severe weather. But I do have some good last-second adjustments that I do. These were 4 to 5 inch diameter ones. But I was going so fast because I wanted to get through the hail core without having too much damage so I could get to the other side. But there ended up being so many hailstones in this core. A lot of times they happen near the mesocyclone. Sometimes they get flung out of the backside of the mesocyclone, and you can see white dots coming from way up high in the storm. But when the updraft starts to rotate, it's stronger and can suspend baseball and softball size hail in the updraft until it can't, and then they fall out of the storm. The modern windshield isn't as dangerous as it used to be. The shards don't keep working their way into your brain or anything, they come out. But wearing sunglasses definitely is helpful in these situations. But I couldn't quite make it through that one. And this is the Dominator 4 that's parked right out front. This is the latest of the Dominators, and I had this during the pandemic when I didn't have access to any of the armored Dominators, so I just spray painted Dominator into the side of it and then started accumulating those hail dents. And this is actually the 3rd generation of the Dominator 4 because the original one was swept away by the storm surge of Hurricane Ian a few years ago. And I loved the hood so much, including the hail dents and the pattern in it, that I towed the vehicle out just to get the hood. And then I got a second flood refurbished Subaru, mounted the hood on it, and then I blew the motor out of that one last year on a tornado in the Texas Panhandle, and got a 3rd flood refurbished Subaru for $2,000 and mounted the hood on it. So that's the Dominator 4 out there. But this happened in the Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma Panhandle. And you know that you storm chase hard when you have to tow the vehicle home. And that's exactly what we had to do up there in Laverne, Oklahoma. And that was a big time hail core. We saw a tornado from that storm as well.
Legendary gorilla hail core.
This thing's gonna go crazy. It's gonna shred the vehicle. And a lot of times when you have that green coloration, that's because it's suspending ice up in the updraft, and that refracts the incoming sunlight. But the tornado is buried back in that hail a lot of times. You can see the inflow band feeding in toward it. A cigarette cloud, we call that.
You won't talk further up.
But you always got to watch for the new cycle, that new wall cloud that forms on its southeastern flank. It'll start to spin, and then it'll get wrapped up into the storm. But these are falling faster than terminal velocity there. In the Hook region of the supercell had a tornado warning. But the hail was so abundant that we couldn't get through that hail core either, even with the gas station sunglasses on. With those southeasterly moving supercells in the high plains, with the 80-mile-an-hour winds and wind-driven baseball hail are really powerful. And I have seen a flying cow, just like the movie Twister. This was also in Wyoming in 2018. And I was in a rental car on this day when the tornado first started touching down. It was 12 miles away. I saw a little pencil come down. And then I got a flat tire on the canyon roads there of Wyoming. I was in a very small rental sedan. And I had two options. I could fix the tire and miss the tornado, or I could drive on the rim for 12 miles. So that's exactly what I did. Drove on the rim and got up to this tornado, and then it retrograded, came back toward me. I saw a flying cow flying through the tornado, and then hail blew out all the windows again. Softballs came around it in the high plains. And I came upon a destroyed farmhouse, and a rancher came out from underneath the stairwell after surviving the tornado with two big Siberian husky dogs covered in mud. And I said, no problem, we can take shelter in my rental car. And they got back there and shredded the interior of the car, mud everywhere. And then we put the donut tire on and then returned it. And here's the flying cow with that tornado. There are a lot of updrafts in the vortex, so you can assume that it might have landed gently. But you can see the forelegs that went upside down for a second. And they were reported missing by the ranchers there. This is in Federal, Wyoming, also in 2018. The High Plains went nuts in 2018 and into 2019, but they've been quiet since. And then the Central Great Plains and Dixie Alley have been active over the last 3 years. But there was the vortex. And it also showed that deviant motion moving off to the northwest. But I've also seen the widest tornado in history. I've storm chased for 30 years now, since I was 16. So I've seen a lot of crazy things. I've seen the second widest tornado in history too. But the El Reno, Oklahoma tornado on May 31st, 2013 was 2.6 miles wide. And you can see the reservoir of low pressure hovering just above the ground. That's called the dynamic pipe. And it drills toward the Earth's surface just like a hand drill. And when it gets within range of the surface, you get jet-like vortices that'll form underneath it, and sometimes multiple vortices. But this tornado was so large that the individual suction vortices got up to a 1/4 mile wide each. And we were chasing this one in the Dominator 1 and the Dominator 2. The Dominator 3 had just been finished in 2013. But we tried to intercept this tornado using a hook slice maneuver, which is where you go from west to east to the supercell. And it initially was moving southeast. You can see the left edge is still moving right to left here. But then it also did that deviant motion, widened out to 2.6 miles wide. And the legendary Tim Samaras was chasing this one also with the Twist-X team. He deployed his turtle probes on this storm, but sadly, they lost their lives from one of those suction vortices as it widened. And we were trying to intercept it in the Dominator 1 and 2, and we ran into a power line with the Dominator 2, and it got stuck on the front light bar of the vehicle. Sparks were flying everywhere, and we tried to free ourselves from the power line, so we put it in reverse, and it tightened up the power line so much that it shot the hood off like a frisbee into the tornado, and we never found it again. We had to chase the rest of the day with an exposed engine. It solved our overheating problem that we had. It may have saved us from intercepting it because I'm not sure if the Dominator 2 could have handled the suction vortices in this one. This was rated an EF3. I believe it was initially given an EF5 rating, and then it was downgraded because of the engineering wasn't sufficient to generate an EF5 rating. That's why we haven't had an EF5 since 2013. It's purely a damage-based scale. So if a tornado doesn't hit anything at peak intensity, it's hard to give it an accurate rating. There you can see all the vortices in that feeding up into the dynamic pipe, just hovering above the ground. but those individual vortices got up to 1/4 mile wide. I also love to chase flash floods in the summer and into the fall, especially in the desert Southwest. This one was in southern Utah a few years ago when I was working for AccuWeather, and I tried to get a shot running in the front of the flash flood. That's the debris plug right there. So the flood is generated like 50 to 60 miles upstream and picks up all that debris. And so the goal when you're chasing a flood is to target the front wall of the debris plug of it.
This is extreme meteorologist Reed Timmer. Ahead of a flash flood that's coming down the canyon here. Gonna pop up.
I call myself an extreme meteorologist with AccuWeather. But there you can see the front of it. And these are dangerous to hikers that are in Slot Canyon.
Oh, wow.
If that grabs onto your shorts, you've got big problems. A lot of times they're generated off wildfire burn scars when they have that really dark coloration. But it's actually pretty relaxing to chase these floods because you wait for a few hours until they arrive. And you can increase the volume of this next one here. This was in Pine Gulch, Colorado. I get the Taco Bell joke for this one all the time.
There it is, folks. Big plug on it. Oh my God. Oh, huge log.
But you can see the color of it. That shows that it came off of a wildfire burn scar. I was down in the Texas Hill Country covering those floods, and the debris plugs on those were 100 feet tall because the rainfall that generated those floods were 20 to 30 inches of rain. Also down dry riverbeds, so you had a big plug, a debris plug that came down. The Team Dominator Storm Recovery Group, you've seen them in orange. They were out there for 25 days doing flood recovery, helping out after the storms. But I do love chasing these flash floods, the front walls of them. You target them using hourly rainfall, and then you predict which basin they'll go down, and then you just wait for them at the base until they come down, and you can fly a drone and scout the flood. You can hear them coming like 30 minutes in advance. Gizmo loved to chase flash floods as well. She would start barking when they were about 30 minutes out. But here's Tim Samaras, an absolute legend of tornado science, and he was a huge inspiration for our science mission as well. He and his TwistX team would deploy turtle probes in the path of tornadoes, and basically the Dominator 3 is a mobile version of the turtle probe, and it's shaped so that it always has downward force directed on the Dominator 3. These have a canonical shape and a known surface, so you can calculate the pressure fall inside of a tornado based on differential pressure across the probe. But sadly, Tim Samaras passed away in the El Reno tornado, and he was trying to deploy the turtle probes inside of that tornado. And he also measured the world record pressure fall inside of a tornado of 100 millibars inside the Manchester, South Dakota F4 tornado. And we live underneath about 1,000 millibars. That's the entire weight of the atmosphere above us. So it's that pressure fall inside of the tornado that drives the winds around it, and especially the gradients in there. But we also had a pitot tube anemometer that Tim Samaras invented, mounted on top of the Dominator 3. He was a self-taught engineer and just an incredible scientist that did his own science as well. He was self-funded and had so many inventions, from the turtle probes to the Big Kahuna lightning camera, which was a high-speed lightning camera as well. But he was a huge inspiration for our science mission. As is Gizmo, the storm-chasing dog. She lived to be 17. Sadly, she passed away a couple of months ago. But she definitely storm-chased with me for 17 years. She saw over 250 tornadoes, Category 5 hurricane, floods as well. Here's her on top of the Dominator 3. And this tornado right here, this was just after a tornado intercept that Gizmo and I had on foot. And I was separated from the Dominator 3, and the tornado touched down really quickly, and it hit a freshly plowed field, and suddenly a huge debris cloud was coming at us, and we couldn't make it back to the Dominator 3 in time. So I hid Gizmo in my breadbasket, put my back into the wind. I felt these corn stalks hitting me. And then right after that, the tornado moved on. Gizmo had no idea what happened. She had the pink cast because I broke her paw one year when she had an altercation with a German Shepherd one time. But they became friends, but she had to have a cast during the 2019 season. But she did get over 250 tornadoes. I don't think she was aware of many of them. But this is a picture where I almost got struck by lightning one time. See the hair standing up from the electric field. Gizmo knew we were in danger. She's looking at the photographer there. I was totally oblivious. This is her after a hurricane. When she chased Hurricane Michael, the pressure fall, I think, caused her to get a little bit scared. So that was her last hurricane chase. But she drove all across the country. There she is. So these are my original storm chasing vehicles. I didn't always have the Dominators, but I built those in 2008 when we started working with Discovery Channel storm chasers. They made it possible for us to do science and build the Dominators. But my first storm chasing vehicle was a 1985 Plymouth Reliant, and I grew up just up the road in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I started off chasing lake effect snow squalls up there. And also I tried to get tornadoes in Michigan, but Lake Michigan can have a stabilizing effect on the atmosphere. But I had to sneak out and storm chase my first couple of years because my mom wasn't a big fan of the safety concerns with storm chasing. But then I went to the University of Oklahoma in 1998 to study meteorology and storm chase. That's my college storm chasing vehicle, held together by duct tape, and I drove that one 37,000 miles without changing the oil. And then we had to abandon it near the Kansas-Oklahoma border. We scratched out the VIN number and just walked away from that vehicle. And that's the Dominator 1 on the right. And the design is intended to keep us on the ground inside of a tornado. So that's why it has the aerodynamic outer shell. And we want it to work the opposite of an airplane wing. So when we drop the shell flush to the ground, it eliminates the wind going underneath it. And the wind just going over top of it exerts a downward force. So that would keep us on the ground in theory. But we also had to add a spike system to the Dominator 2 and 3. So we press a button and angled spikes go into the ground. And that will anchor us to the ground in the strongest of tornadoes. But they were built by the mechanic at the golf course that I worked at up in Michigan. Kevin Barton built the Dominators. And we never tested them. We just picked them up from the golf course and drove them right into a tornado. And it measured a 155 mile per hour wind in the Dominator 1 in eastern Wyoming during one of those tornadoes, and 140 mile per hour wind with a window blowout in Nebraska during one of our first intercepts. But I got interested in meteorology at a very young age and the science of storms and storm chasing. But I grew up a science nerd. My mom was a 7th grade middle school science teacher, and so I didn't go through puberty until about age 25, so I did things like insect collecting. I was a Boy Scout. Love storms as well, but here's my bug collection. I specialized in moths and also beetles, and then I caught an eastern Hercules beetle at age 16 and retired from insect collecting and knew I had to follow my real passion, which was always storm chasing and meteorology. But there's a picture of my mom. She definitely got me into the sciences. But she was a little against storm chasing at first due to the safety concerns with it. So I had to sneak out for a couple of years once I got my driver's license at age 16. But that was definitely a game changer for me because I could drive after the storms and didn't have to wait for them to come to me anymore. But I did finally get my mom on a storm chase in 2015. I went to the University of Oklahoma for 17 straight years, continuously enrolled, 98 to 2015. And my mom came down for graduation to Oklahoma City, and she landed, and I told her, we're going storm chasing today. And she said, no, we're not. Take me back to the hotel. But I told her, don't worry, we probably won't see anything. And she ended up coming along, and we saw this crazy tornado, a multiple vortex tornado in North Texas. And you could hear the roar from it. My mom was going crazy in the backseat of the car. She had Gizmo on her lap as well. But if you can increase the volume of this, her commentary is pretty funny in the backseat. That wasn't her yet. That's her. You can see my hat fly off into the tornado.
Careful!
But she didn't like the noise.
Oh my God!
You can really hear it roar when the suction board seems to develop.
We gotta get out of here. Ready?
Give it a gear.
Safe? What the hell are you doing?
Then at the end, she says something really funny about Gizmo. I have a double edit in here.
Safe? What the hell are you doing?
I'm
promise. I got this under control.
Gizmo did a dingleberry.
She was saying anything she could to end the chase in that moment, but Gizmo was totally fine. She hadn't been there before. But that was her last storm chase. She'll never go again. But one of my first tornadoes at the University of Oklahoma in 1999 happened to be an F5 on May 3rd. And this was just in the southwest of Oklahoma City. And 5 of us freshman meteorology students were packed in a soft-top geo-tracker chasing the F5. And we lost visual of the vortex coming through a grove of trees. And we came out, and it was coming right at us. And somebody had the bright idea to abandon the tracker and run underneath an overpass. And there was a family freaking out under the overpass as well. But this was before the research came out that showed that an overpass can be more dangerous because it can accelerate the wind underneath it. But thankfully it wobbled a little to the left. And the deviant motion probably saved us here. This is when it was near peak intensity. And it's well known as one of the strongest tornadoes in history. The mobile Doppler on wheels measured a 300-mile-per-hour wind just above the ground in this tornado. But you can watch the left edge of it. It starts moving left to right across your screen. So if I had the Dominator 3, I'd be about an 1/8 of a mile up the road, shooting rockets into the tornado. The parachutes would pop, and then the movement of the sensors would give us a real-time tornado intensity estimate. But this would wobble to the left, and then right after this, we saw the dark side that the tornadoes leave behind and the damage. There were horses just meandering in the middle of the interstate. People were emerging from their homes to total destruction. And that was the first time that we had done search and rescue after the tornadoes. But still might be one of the strongest tornadoes I've ever seen today, to this day. But I've seen 4 EF5s, one on the super outbreak of 2011, Philadelphia, Mississippi, and another one on May 24, 2011 near Piedmont, Oklahoma. But I missed the May 20, 2013 EF5 tornado, and it only missed my house by 3/4 of a mile. But I was working for Channel 4 at the time, the news station in Oklahoma City, and Mike Morgan wanted us on the southern storm to shoot helicopter shots. And then Gizmo was in my house and almost got hit by the EF5 in 2013. My house was also hit in 2015, and I missed that tornado as well. I was on a storm a little bit further north. And Gizmo was actually in the backyard right before the tornado hit my house. And I saw her on a security camera. A big lightning strike came in. She flattened to the ground and then ran into the doggy door. And then the house was hit by the tornado. So some years later, in 2007, we started working with Discovery Channel Storm Chasers. And we initially were just licensing footage to the show. And then they would put Sean Casey's voice over it. But in 2008, they asked if we wanted to be a part of the show. So they paid us $12,000 for the first year of Storm Chasers. But in the second season, we built the Dominator 1 in 2009. And Discovery Channel wouldn't let us build the Dominators at first. They wanted us to be the underdog team that was always deploying ground probes and using a regular vehicle with minimal technology. But we did it anyway. We went to the golf course and met with the mechanic there, Kevin Barton, and we built the Dominator 1 and had it ready to go for the second season. But they actually didn't have the insurance in place for us to intercept tornadoes, so they said that we weren't allowed to do that either. But we did that anyway as well during the first season. Drove right into them, and these are the trailers from our 2 seasons on there. That's Sean Casey. He's in the other interceptor vehicle. It's called the TIV, or the Tornado Intercept Vehicle. He built TIV 1 and TIV 2, and he was shooting an IMAX film inside of the tornadoes. We were dropping ground probes inspired by Tim Samaras. That's when I realized I was a spaz for the first time when I saw that. This was the first season with the Dominator 1. Tim Samaras was a part of that second season and the Twist X team. They called it the Red Shoe, the Dominator 1. So we got inside of the tornado June 17, 2009, and it blew the window out of the Dominator 1.
Storm Chasers.
We used to have polycarbonate windows in the Dominator 1 that you'd have to manually lift up into place. and I rolled up the regular window inserts, and a suction vortex came around the backside of the tornado, and it ramped an EF1 tornado into an EF3, and that blew the windows out. But now we have polycarbonate inserts and a double layer of automatic window lifts with Dominator 2 and 3. And we also did a Bud Light commercial with Discovery Channel. Saved the Bud Light beer truck. Anything to support the science mission back then. But we did finally get an opportunity to test the Dominator 1 after that first season with it for the Mythbusters series. And we parked the Dominator 1 behind a 747 jet, and they ramped the winds up to 300 miles per hour. You can see the TIV on the other engine over there, and they had harpoons or augers that would go into the ground. And I'd actually feel safer in an EF5 tornado in the TIV over the Dominator, but we wanted to make the Dominator very mobile as well, because we figured if we couldn't get to the tornado, we couldn't intercept it. But this was before we added the spike system to the Dominator 1, and you'll actually see it slide across the ground, but you can also see it work, because as the winds ramped up, it would get compressed into the ground, so you can almost see the downward force getting directed on the vehicle. This was up in Michigan, so you'll see huge chunks of ice flying through the air, almost like debris. But it's impossible to simulate the winds of a tornado because they're constantly accelerating, rotating. There's vertical winds in the tornado as well. But this was the closest we could come back then. But even the armor worked to the flying debris.
Uh-oh, Dominator moving.
But initially, the Dominator just had 16-gauge steel on the outside, and we shot a 2x4 at it with a high-powered air cannon, and it went right through the steel armor. So that's why we added the polyethylene Kevlar composite spray to the outside, which is just basically bed liner, Line-X bed liner. But it started off as a 2008 Chevy Tahoe, and this was the first vehicle that I purchased using a bank loan and got insurance on it, and then immediately turned it into the red shoe and didn't tell about it for many years. But one of our first intercepts was June 17 of 2009, and back then we were flying an RC aircraft outside of the tornado, and then we would try to intercept it at the same time with the Dominator 1 to measure surface, wind data, and pressure. And then the goal was to deploy parachute probes out of the RC aircraft that would ride the inflow all the way back to the tornado, and then we'd get that three-dimensional X-ray of the thermodynamics and wind in the tornado. But this was important because we realized that the parachute probes would never make it to the tornado. They just hit the downdraft, that sheath of sinking air around the tornado, and get deflected straight into the ground. So that's why we use rockets and air cannons now to get inside of the tornado.
It's coming down!
But we were trying to intercept that tornado with the Dominator 1. And you can even see the clear slot, the sinking air visually wrapping around the tornado. That's that sheath of sinking air. But this was before the time that you could get quadcopters from the store, so we had to use this RC aircraft. And right after this episode aired on Storm Chasers, I got a letter in the mail from the FAA threatening $1 million fine for this, using the drone. There you can see the parachute probes riding the inflow, and we thought it was going to be a huge success. They were heading straight toward the tornado, but then they hit that sinking air and got deflected straight into the ground. You can see the clear slot carving into the wall cloud there. That's the sinking air. Big mesocyclone. It's on the order of tens of miles. There you can see the mesocyclone. It looks like a mothership supercell. And that's what the tornado looks like from underneath. Basically a cinnamon bun or a nipple drilling down to the ground. It's already on the ground here, but I thought it was going to be a weak tornado, and one of those suction vortices whipped around the backside and blew the window out. The radar engineer in the back seat, before we even had the window blow out, he had a stream of blood coming out of his ear. Our camera guy was like, "Nick, your ear's bleeding." And he found out that was from a ruptured eardrum from the pressure fall inside of the tornado. But watch the suction vortex develop.
We're inside it right now. Look at this.
Look around, man, it's awesome.
All right, right and left. All right, we gotta get out of here.
You can hear the winds exponentially ramp up with the arrival of the suction vortex, and the winds went up to 138.8 miles an hour in that one.
We're inside it right now. Look at this. Look around, man. It's awesome.
You can see a pressure wave on the ground just before the suction vortex hit. And then the winds ramped up to EF3 intensity, which is consistent with the winds being 2 to 4 times that of the main tornado in those suction vortices. You can't roll up the window when it's blown out. But you'll see how big the tornado got as it intensified to our southeast there. And that was Tim Samaras parked on the side of the road. He was trying to deploy his turtle probes on it, and he was always very concerned about our safety out there intercepting tornadoes. And he actually gave me a Band-Aid right there on the side of the road, and then he raced off to the east and then dropped his turtle probe in the path of the tornado. So after Storm Chasers was canceled in 2011, we started our own series called Tornado Chasers and posted it on social media. And this was the first season when the Dominator 3 got finished in 2013.
Violet tornado. Let's intercept. Let's go forward.
And our first tornado that we got inside with the Dominator 3 was an EF4 tornado. But we also chased the El Reno one with Dominator 1 and 2. That's the rolled Weather Channel vehicle there. Also by a suction vortex. And I was working for Channel 4, the news station in Oklahoma City. They have helicopters chasing the tornadoes, ground teams. It's like watching a football game down there when tornado outbreaks happen, but real lives are at stake.
New member of the forewarned storm team.
There's Chopper 4 and all 3 Dominators. And we even had Jim Cantori along with us for the first intercept in the Dominator 3.
See the rising sun there? And that's the new circulation. That area could easily put down a tornado very soon.
And hey, it's Cantor, man. Right in the town of Edmond, Oklahoma.
Tornado on the ground.
Stop right here. That's the debris too big.
You'll see the vertical motion, ripping trees out of the ground.
Oh my God! It's a large tornado.
Suction vortices forming.
Yes. This is a violent tornado, guys. This is bad damage here. Good job. When a tornado is not moving side to side, it's coming right at you.
That was in Bennington, Kansas, a couple days before El Reno. I was using air cannons then, and ripped my shorts on that barbed wire fence. Real sensitive to adrenaline, I think.
You see a tornado coming down.
Watch this tornado. It created a helical suction vortex. That's as the tornado is trying to plant and takes that jet-like vortex and wraps it around the base of the funnel.
We're going inside. Blast through. We're going inside.
The vertical winds we're trying to measure in a tornado as well. And we never seem to drop it down when we yell that very often, but this was in Andover, Kansas, a couple of years ago, 2022, and I captured this one with a drone as well. I was also in a rental car on this day, launched the drone, and then forgot that I launched a drone and drove into the tornado with my rental car and had to come back the next day to find this footage. But you can see that jet-like vortex that feeds into the base of the dynamic pipe. You can see the base of that low pressure that's spinning cyclonically just above the ground. And when it gets close enough to the ground, it accelerates those jet-like vortices underneath. And then when that tries to plant and drill down, it'll wrap it around the base of it, and you get that helical configuration, and it'll kind of touch down and lift back up throughout its life cycle. But we were streaming this one on Facebook too, and it didn't have a tornado warning because it was so close to the radar in Wichita. And the fire chief was watching the live stream on Facebook, sounded the tornado sirens, and there was actually no loss of life from this tornado in Andover. But this one was rated an EF3 at the time. But some of those vertical winds in there are definitely in excess of 200 miles per hour. But the goal would be to intercept that tornado with a Dominator and just throw parachute probes out the window, and then they would rise from the ground all the way up through the tornado. And the hardest data set to collect is that ground up data. The ground data set is the most difficult because that's the most dangerous to collect. And this is what a supercell looks like generally. the tornado happens underneath the rotating updraft. And if you have a thunderstorm that forms with no wind shear, it'll develop straight up and then rain on the updraft and then collapse. But when you get wind shear in the atmosphere, it'll give it a tilt and it'll also start to rotate, and that keeps the downdraft and the updraft separated so you can have a longer lived storm. And when the updraft is rotating, it's a lot stronger too, and it can even penetrate into the stratosphere. You can see the overshooting top on this supercell as well. And that's what makes it capable of suspending those baseball and softball size hail stones in the updraft. And you have to punch from north to south through that hail core to get to the south side of the tornado so you can see it. And this is what a radar image looks like when you're looking down at the supercell. The mesocyclone is on the southwest side usually, with southwesterlies aloft. And then the rain and hail wraps around the mesocyclone, creating a hook echo on the backside. And if you want to do a hook slice maneuver, you have to punch from west to east through that hook echo, punch through the rain and hail, and then you can have a clear view of the tornado, and a lot of times you're in the path of it as well. But if you want to launch a rocket at the tornado, you want to be in the inflow notch of it, about a mile or less away from the tornado. And if you shoot the rocket in the general direction, the parachute will deploy, and the northerly inflow will pull it back into the tornado, and then the wind will do the rest, moving through it. Not all tornadoes are multiple vortex. Some are just one singular vortex, depending on the tornado's intensity, the balance of the wind around it, and its interaction with the friction of the earth. But almost every tornado I've seen from a supercell storm has that sinking air around the outside of it. And we learned that by deploying parachute probes from a drone at distance, that it would never get back to the tornado. And that's why we have to use rockets or just drive the sensors into the tornado with the Dominator. And they exist in all shapes and sizes. A lot of it's related to their life cycle, but a lot of times they'll start off with a bowl funnel above the ground with a dirt circulation underneath, and then when the dynamic bite fully plants, they'll turn into a stovepipe tornado, or even a wedge, which is one that's wider than it is tall at cloud base. And then when they weaken, that sinking air chokes it off from the mesocyclone, and you get the rope tornado when it ropes out. And sometimes those can be really strong because they'll get compact and get stretched by the mesocyclone, and you can even get stronger winds in those skinny rope tornadoes. This is one that I saw in 2007 in Manitoba, Canada on June 23rd, and we were in a Hyundai Accent on this chase, and it sounded like a vacuum cleaner when we drove it, max speed of about 55 miles an hour, and we ran out of gas just after this tornado because the gas stations are fewer and far between up there. But this one started off as a cone, fully planted, turned into a wedge, and then split up into these multiple vortices. They had 3 big-time vortices in there, and they usually will get 3 to 5 as they're interacting with the ground. But I think this was the strongest tornado in Canada history. But the day before this, on June 22nd, 2007, they had their first ever F5 in Canada, and it was during kind of a fluky setup in southern Manitoba. I was targeting the day after because it looked a lot bigger, but this tornado didn't hit anything at peak intensity, so they probably got a rating that was too low. This one was rated an F4 tornado. But I missed that F5 the day before because I made a detour to see the prairie dog towns on the way up to Manitoba. This is the enhanced Fujita scale here, and it was adapted from the Fujita scale originally, but it's purely a damage-based scale, and those winds are estimated from the damage, and that's why we haven't had an EF5 tornado, because there are a lot of damage indicators that have to be present to get an EF5, like proper anchor bolting. It has to be a really well-built home, totally destroyed, to justify an EF5 rating. And if you have a mobile home that is hit by an EF5 and an EF2 tornado, the highest rating you can give that is an EF2, because they both cause total destruction. So that's why we haven't had an EF5, because a lot of those tornadoes that are really strong are hitting in absence of engineering or mobile homes a lot of times near peak intensity. But I think there have been a lot of EF5s since 2013, including the Rolling Fork, Mississippi tornado, probably the Mayfield, Kentucky one. A couple here in Indiana were also probably EF5 tornadoes. But they did upgrade that one in North Dakota this year from June 20th. So it's possible they could go back in time and retroactively upgrade tornadoes. The biggest and the strongest tornadoes happen right here in the Tornado Alley of North America and the eastward extension of Tornado Alley called Dixie Alley. And I think it's always going to be active in Tornado Alley and Dixie Alley because of the permanent geographical features that are there with the Rocky Mountains off to the west, the gradually sloping terrain of the Great Plains, and the heat source of the Gulf of Mexico. And that's why I think that we're seeing these interannual to 10-year cycles with tornado frequency, and they bounce around a little bit, whether there's an El Nino or a La Nina in the tropical Pacific. If you have a La Nina, it pushes the severe weather further east in Dixie Alley, like Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, up into southern Indiana, southern Illinois. But if you get an El Nino or neutral conditions in the Pacific, combined with that warm blob in the North Pacific called the North Pacific Oscillation, then it'll bring the severe weather back to the Great Plains and even the high plains right up against the mountains. And I think this year, going into 2026, we're going to see a La Nina again, winter into spring, and that'll lead to an active Dixie Alley in February, March, and April. But then an El Nino is forecast to ramp up next spring, so I think that'll bring the severe weather back to the Great Plains, and we might see a repeat of this year. But about 3 years ago, we had that development of the warm blob of water in the North Pacific, and I think that was the very beginning of a 10-year cycle of active tornadoes, so it might be another 5 to 7 more years of these nearly or greater than 2,000 tornadoes every year in the U.S. We also have a tornado alley down in South America with the Pampas down there, which are the Great Plains of South America. I chased down there in 2009 and 10, and they have much better gas station food down there. You can get empanadas down there. But the toilets are actually just holes in the ground, and you have to pull a chain and just flush it down. So actually that's an improvement as well over here. And you also get tornadoes out in China, but I've heard that they have very strict rental car policies out there, so I don't know if I'll be heading out to China. And some of the strongest tornadoes anywhere in the world happen in Bangladesh during about a 2-week period in the early spring when the jet stream splits around the Himalayan plateau and you get a lot of moisture off the Bay of Bengal. I do chase hurricanes. I'm watching Hurricane Melissa very closely, maybe for a last-second flight down to Montego Bay tomorrow morning to chase that. It looks like it could be a Category 5. But chasing hurricanes are way different than tornadoes. They're a big time commitment, and a lot of times you find yourself in a survival situation, sometimes for weeks down there, especially if you're chasing in an island. And the key to chasing a hurricane is to get right in the right eye wall when it's coming ashore, where it makes a 90-degree angle to the coastline. That's when you get the strongest winds, because they come right off the ocean, which has a lot lower friction, and that's when you can measure or experience those 175 plus mile per hour winds. But a problem with that is you also get a storm surge, which is a tsunami-like wall of water that's piled up by the winds and the pressure fall inside of the tornado. And that's what happened to the Dominator 4 when I was chasing Hurricane Ian a couple of years ago. Finally got in position to get that right eye wall, and that's just the price you pay, is you're usually going to lose your vehicle when you finally get into that position. But part of the only way to chase them is to find a stilt home and then get above the storm surge, because it can be 10 to 20 feet deep and have waves on top of it. This was Hurricane Ian a couple of years ago, the arrival of the storm surge. And I was live streaming and everybody thought I broke into this stilt home for safety purposes. But I knew the people, of course. But this is just before the eye wall came in, and then when the eye wall arrived, you had the 175 mile an hour winds with tornadoes wrapping around the inside of it. If I do go down to Hurricane Melissa, I might be trapped down there for a couple of weeks. It's a pretty dangerous country to visit these days, I've heard too. And I'd have to have like a 2-week supply of Vienna sausages out there to survive. You gotta have the survival gear. But this is what that eye wall looked like of a near Category 5 hurricane. And you can't really comprehend the curvature of the flow inside of a hurricane because it's a much larger system. Basically a mesoscale convective system. It's moving a lot slower, so it's not as much of a chase as you just kind of park on the coastline and get hammered by it. But then you do a lot of search and rescue afterward. We were trapped on this island for a few weeks, and I ended up hitching a ride with the Cajun Navy to finally get off of it. But you can see the storm surge coming in 10 to 15 feet deep. But it's hard to do science with hurricanes as well. We were deploying storm surge sensors out there, trying to measure the pressure fall and tornado-like vortices whipping around inside. But our science mission is based purely around tornadoes now. And this was actually a graphic that I made using Microsoft Paint about 10 years ago. You can see I drew the suction vortices accurate with a kink just above the ground. And the lowest pressure falls and strongest winds happen from that kink all the way down to the Earth's surface. And the goal was to intercept the tornadoes with the Dominator to measure the surface winds and also shoot rockets into the tornado to get the parachute probes inside. And we'd also drop an array of ground probes in the path of tornadoes. And we're going to do that using FPV drones. And eventually we want to get dozens of sensors into the tornado at the same time, because the goal is to measure the gradients in thermodynamics, because that's what determines tornado intensity and behavior. This is the rocket launch. We need this to get through the sinking air around the tornado. Okay, so now the rocket is flying toward the tornado. It punches through the pocket of sinking air around the vortex. And once inside, the nose cone pops off and the parachute deploys, and it's carried around inside the vortex, just like the movie Twister. And we've got kind of like Dorothy from Twister. So as the probe is getting carried around inside the tornado, we're immediately getting live data like this. We've got pressure, relative humidity. We've got IMU acceleration. We've got our GPS position. And we even have the data of exactly how the sensor is tumbling around in 3D. But right now, we're only getting live data at 1 time per second. But we actually have to recover the physical sensor to get the super high resolution data. But for the Lawrence to Linville EF4 tornado, the tornado carried it over 26 miles away from where we launched it. Mark, how is the rocket in the tornado right now? That's Mark with the receiver, that Tupperware container. How high is it? He's getting the live data. 10,000 feet? No. But that data only comes in at 1 time a second, so we have to recover the actual probe to get the 10 times per second data and during its whole entire journey. And that one probe that we launched in the suction vortex at the beginning of the presentation, we lost that one after having live data for 10 seconds. And we still haven't found that sensor. There's a bright red parachute somewhere just to the north of Huntsville, Alabama. But these are the lawn dart sensors.
The lawn dart.
That's Will Clay 25, our extreme engineer, basically Tim Samaras.
It'll fly, it'll look like a mortar. So I see in Ukraine.
Hitting lawn darts like Tiger Woods.
They can drop off.
So we'll drop those from certain altitudes so they jam into the ground, and they'll be able to measure the surface wind and pressure at the very near surface of the tornado. And then the probes will be flying around inside, and we'll be driving into it in the Dominator. But this is the wind that we measured inside of that tornado with the window blowout. The blue dots are wind speed, and you can see overall it was a weak tornado. I thought we could handle it with the windows down. And then in less than a second, when that vortex hit the vehicle, it ramped them up to 138.8 miles an hour, which is consistent with the 2 to 4 times that of the main tornado. So that's why we built the Dominator 3, the ultimate tornado interceptor. It's based on a diesel Ford F-350 vehicle. Gets about 10 miles a gallon, and it weighs about 12,500 pounds. And we added a rocket launcher to the roof that was built from refurbished parts from a junkyard, and that feeds to a big red button that you can hit and launch the rockets into the tornado. And a lot of times lightning likes to move along the smoke trail of the rocket, the vapor trail, so that's how we have to drop down into the Dominator to hit the red button when we launch a rocket at a tornado. And we got our first sensor into a tornado in 2019 on May 28 in northeastern Kansas. We launched it just to the south of Lawrence, Kansas, about 2 miles to the south of there. And the parachute popped, was pulled into the tornado. It did 2 revolutions around the tornado and achieved speeds of 190 miles an hour just above the ground. It was rated an EF4 tornado. And you can see the inflow notch right behind me. It was wrapped in rain. Right behind that clear slot, that little light area that's wrapping around the tornado, that's the sinking air. Sometimes it can have rain in it, but the EF4 tornado is right back there. What? I was trying to get the igniters hooked up properly. I can hear the siren sounding, you can hear the roar of the tornado back there.
It's coming right at us.
But that's the inflow notch. You can see the northerly inflow band feeding it toward the tornado.
Don't go, Sean, we're good.
I launched it with no countdown. And I visually saw the parachute pop and pull the sensor into the tornado. Power flashes just to our south as it crossed the road.
Hold on, stop.
And that's Mark with the receiver out the window. He'll start reading off altitude data in meters. You can see the wedge there to the east of us. And at this time it was doing 2 revolutions around the tornado, achieved speeds of 190 miles an hour.
4146 Denver.
rising about 15,000 feet. And then we lost signal with the probe.
We're at 18,000.
And we thought we lost the sensor forever, but the next day we posted a picture of it on Facebook asking if anybody had seen it, and it took 5 minutes and they found the sensor in the front yard of a church in Leavenworth, Kansas, over 26 miles away from where we launched it. Those are the guys that found it, Matt and Jeremy. So I went out there and recovered the probe, and we got the whole entire data set, the 10 times per second data. The parachute popped about 400 feet above the ground, and then it entered the tornado, and you'll see the 2 loops that it did around the tornado. And then it entered a vent in the top of it and accelerated up to 130 miles an hour in the straight up, and then entered the mesocyclone and did tilted ascent all the way up to about 30,000 feet. And then it fell out of the tornado and it weakened and then rode the low-level jet right to the front yard of the church there in Leavenworth, Kansas. And it measured 113.5 millibar pressure deficit just above the ground as well. So I didn't have the Dominators for many years. We did a live streaming platform called TVN Weather Live back in the day, and Sean was an investor of that platform. Became a good friend of mine. But when that collapsed, we gave him the Dominator 3, and he had it up in Canada for many years until he went through a divorce about 3 years ago. So I saw some opportunity in that and was able to buy the Dominator 3 back, and that was before the 2023 season, and that's why we've had dozens of tornado intercepts since then, starting with this one on May 12, 2023 in the Nebraska Sandhills. And this tornado was moving from east to west, so I had to go west and then south to get right in the path of it. And this was a textbook intercept with the hydraulics dropping the shell flush to the ground, and then we put 2 holes in the road surface with a spike system.
Big time tornado, guys.
Yeah, it's right there.
You shooting, Sierra? Good shot.
For sure.
You guys keep it up, Nation.
All right, we're going to get in that tornado. We're going to get in there.
Protected in the Orland research vehicle, Dominator 3, the team prepares to drive into a tornado.
But I lined it up visually. It looked large, but the rotation looked pretty gradual.
A subsonic sensor to measure.
That's what we measure the pressure falls with.
Inside.
The pressure falls will give you concussion-like symptoms inside of the tornado. Your eardrums will blow out.
Drone piloting of Jordan Hall.
You got drones going in, right? Yes. Okay.
But they need to time everything perfectly.
We're going to have to move up a little bit. Hold on. When they come at me.
I had about 6 Celsius energy drinks before this too. So my face was so red. We had to stay up all night the night before.
And now, it's time to move.
Hey, let's go.
We line it up with the left edge, still moving across our field of view. We've got to go west and south to get in the path of it.
The storm is
It was a closed low, that's why it was moving east to west.
And this particular storm is highly unusual, moving east to west in gale.
And now we're right in the path of the tornado. You'll see the front wall come through first with northerly winds, and I can feel it lift up the back of the Dominator a little bit. You'll see cedar trees going through, and you'll see a couch fly by. I think it was the love seat. Here comes the couch. And this is the center of the tornado and everything stops. Major pressure falls right there, then the back wall came through. And then the concussion-like symptoms started here. I'm gasping for air.
It's a perfectly executed intercept.
You can see the wedge moving away.
Dead center recording of data inside the tornado. The first intercept by a woman in a Dominator.
She was the only one wearing a helmet, too, the only smart one in the group.
And a highly photogenic storm which harmed no one in its path.
That's intense. What do you think?
That's awesome.
I think we had about 150 mile an hour winds, but a 75 millibar pressure windsaw. We filled the holes with flexio rubber in the road surface. And we drove around for 2 hours aimlessly in a state of confusion after that. I think because of the pressure fall.
The subsonic sensor recorded a gradual, then massive pressure drop with a quick recovery over 3/4 of a second, meaning there are massive forces at play. Pressure differences in tornadoes can affect sinuses, ears, and possibly even the brain.
There's the pressure. It was gradual fall in the front of the tornado, and then a really quick recovery in the backside, almost like the shape of the tornado with that gradual lift of the condensation funnel on the front and the vertical backside of it. But it really is true, the concussion-like symptoms happen there. Anytime I get the horse mouth like this, I'm running low on oxygen. This is a funny meme from my CBS arm. And 2025 was a crazy tornado season. We saw 75 tornadoes this year, 96 tornadoes last year, including one on December 26th, just to the north of Houston. And this was one of the big tornadoes in North Dakota and South Dakota. They had 70 tornadoes in North Dakota this year, which was a record, including that EF5 tornado. And this one I was trying to intercept in the Dominator 3. Local man Weather and I were just north of this tornado, and it was initially moving due north, and I thought that motion was going to continue. And then it became a wobbler and went off to the east, and I had to do a 3-point turn in the middle of the road here, and suddenly 100 Toyota RAV4s came out of the rain, and one of them tried to squeak around behind me when I was backing up, slammed into him, and I hardly felt a thing. But I ripped off his bumper and then dragged it 600 feet all the way to the tornado. He's a friend of mine though, so it's like bumper cars out there these days. Mario Kart. But you look up at the tornado where it meets cloud base and you can see the sinking air, the clear slot that wraps around it. That's how you can tell how wide the tornado could get as well. I like to look at cloud base, but a lot of times you get 2 inflow jets at the base of the tornado that we call ghost trains. So I tried to intercept this one from the backside, doing a hook slice maneuver. And the ghost train was so strong that I jammed the brakes into the ground of the Dominator 3 and it still pulled us across the wet pavement. The side mirrors bent out, the hood was bouncing up and down, and it opens from the front to the back. So it would have been like a parachute if the hood popped open here. It just takes forever to do a 3-point turn in the Dominator. We should have been in the ditch right there on the north side of the road, fully deployed, and then we definitely could have handled this tornado, I think. This is rated an EF3, but it probably had EF5 winds in it. You can see the cloud element just whipping in the tornado there. So I should have just driven into it, but when you're not fully deployed and when the spikes aren't in the ground, we can't handle as many tornadoes. This one we launched a rocket into near Morton, Texas, in the Texas Panhandle, and this one was a mile wide. And I guarantee you tornadoes like this will give you pink eye and lung infections as well. So that dustbuster that Gizmo and I intercepted, I had a 3-month case of pink eye from that tornado. They carry fungus in there, bacteria, fecal matter in these tornadoes, so they can actually be toxic. And the EF5 tornado that hit Joplin, Missouri in 2011 had a bunch of flesh-eating bacteria in it because it was digging it up from way underneath the ground. So we're going to, as part of our science mission next year, we're going to try to measure the toxicity of the debris clouds inside of tornadoes. But we measured a 200-mile-per-hour wind above the ground in a tornado in Weatherford, Texas. But so far, we've only gotten 1 sensor into the tornado at a time. And next year, we're going to launch dozens of them. We're going to have one of those North Korea-style missile launchers that lifts up from the Dominator, just row upon row of rockets that'll pop off. This was a tornado in Westmoreland, Kansas last year. And I want to show this one because it shows the dynamic pipe tilting horizontally over our head. You can see the sinking motion around it. And these tornadoes underneath the relatively high base storm are a lot of times the strongest because it requires a very low pressure fall to get condensation all the way down to the ground. This one also didn't have a tornado warning. Streaming live on Facebook, and the firefighters sounded the sirens.
Oh my God!
But you can see the clear slot, the sinking air all the way around it.
Oh wow!
Spinning cyclonically in there.
Ladies and inclusion, guys, Westmoreland. Dangerous tornado here.
Blue, what the
See the scorpion tail above it? It was an EF3 tornado, ripped manhole covers out of the road. And immediately after this, when it roped out, we went and did search and rescue in Westmoreland. And anytime we're storm chasing and we encounter damage, we end the storm chase, immediately do search and rescue. And that's why we've got TDSR with us, Team Dominator Search and Recovery Group, doing storm recovery. They're trained people that will follow behind us when we're storm chasing. And when we encounter damage, they'll shift into action and use their skills to help people until emergency personnel show up.
Where's the bird?
I launched a drone on that tornado and lost it in there. I've lost like probably 10 drones to tornadoes. Here's some of the damage from the Greenfield, Iowa tornado. That one with the suction vortices, that was rated a high-end EF4. And it's those suction vortices that cause total damage to one home, and then the house next door will look like it's untouched when they come into a town and have those suction vortices around. This is the search and rescue in Westmoreland. It's very important to help out after the storms. You can't just chase it and go home, because the recovery effort can last days, weeks, or even years sometimes, especially after the big hurricanes like Hurricane Helene last year, the Texas floods. So by everybody showed up to these events, you're helping our TDSR, Storm Recovery Group, and also our science mission. Everything goes into our science mission at Team Dominator, of course. And we're also here to talk about never stop chasing as well. I've chased my passion since I was 16, of course, since I got my driver's license, but I loved weather since about 5 or 7 years old. I was actually scared of thunder and lightning before that, and then I woke up one day obsessed with storms, watching the Weather Channel all the time. So I see a lot of young people, the next generation of storm chasers here, and if you're here, you're probably passionate about severe weather, meteorology, or engineering as well. So the key is to never stop chasing your passions, and you'll love what you do for a living. And then you can be like me at 45 years old, still loving storm chasing, of course. But you may not be passionate about storm chasing or meteorology, but if you do have a passion, consider yourself lucky, because a lot of people don't out there, and it definitely makes life a lot more fun and exciting when you love what you do. So thank you for having me here at Wabash, Indiana. Never stop chasing. And we're going to do a Q&A now, using the microphones up here. So if you want to walk up the aisle, if you have a question, I can take your questions. I'm not very good at ending the presentation. I just kind of stop talking. Anybody? Oh, okay. I can't see. How's it going? Love the sweater, the Christmas sweatshirt.
So I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and there's a lot of debate about Fort Wayne.
The Fort Wayne bubble?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've read about it, and they say it's not true, which is more what I believe, but like, what is the science behind that?
Well, there could be some topography upstream of Fort Wayne, like higher terrain or something that can initiate the storms. In Oklahoma, we have the Wichita Mountains there, so they like to develop in southwest Oklahoma and come up I-44 and hit more Oklahoma all the time. But we used to think there was a Norman bubble back then, but then Norman's been getting hit consecutively, and they used to think it was because they couldn't cross the river, the Canadian River, but they can definitely cross rivers, and I've seen them move over lakes, move up and down mountains as well. So it's probably just by chance that there hasn't been one in Fort Wayne, but it could be related to topography upstream of it. But they can take all different angles and everything too, so eventually it could happen.
More kind of like the northeast side of Fort Wayne.
Yeah, that counts.
Yeah, right. No, I know, but that's like, I've lived here since I was 5, so it's a long time to only have one.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is hard. It's hard to get tornadoes at a specific location, even with the outbreaks sometimes. But they do like to take certain tracks. There's always corridors that I've seen throughout the Great Plains and out here where they like to go. That one on the suction vortex intercept in northern Alabama, we knew that was about to hit that elevated terrain up there near Florence. And so but that's how we stayed with the storm, and as soon as it hit that terrain, it went crazy. So sometimes they'll adjust the topography will change the low-level shear and instability around it too. So it can definitely have little adjustments, but tiny little changes in the atmosphere though can lead to it going crazy. Thank you. Okay, we'll see you after. Boomer Sooner. I had a tough game today. Yeah.
What type of engineering do you think is best for like to go along with storm chasing? Because I want to be a storm chaser and I also want to build my own vehicle. So what engineering do you think would go along with that best?
Yeah, those are much more useful tools than engineering skills because as a storm chaser, I can't build, I don't have the skills to build my own vehicles or even the miniaturized sensors. All I can really do is storm chase. So that's why I have to work with skilled people like Will and Local Man Weather. They can fix the vehicle too. They have mechanic skills and engineering skills. So I think that electrical engineering or mechanical engineering or even aerospace engineering are really good ones to go into. And all the mathematics and physics are relatively similar between all of them, so it'd be easy to do both meteorology and engineering. But if you have those engineering skills, you can do your own science mission and build your own tools and everything for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I have a weird one. Our first chase was the one that one gal was talking about, the wood, we call it the wood-burn wedge, because it was an EF3 and multivoricity. Now, here comes a weird question. You went to Oklahoma University, right?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Snowden, Florida?
Yeah.
That's my grandmother's cousin.
Oh my goodness.
His dad and
Wow.
my
I don't
grandfather
know
were
about
brothers.
that. Yeah, I know.
Now, another interesting fact, he grew up just 10 miles north of here.
Wow. Nice to meet you. Cool.
Yeah, between Rowan
Yeah.
and...
A lot of weather readings from here.
But, yeah, I'm famous for that, the Fort Wayne bubble my husband found. But, yeah, the first time I ever saw a tornado from birth, I didn't see it die because it just kept marching on this. In 2000, in June, I was 2 months pregnant with my daughter.
2000.
I was a lab career,
Nice.
and I
Already on the board.
was training somebody, and I heard the thing going off. I knew there was severe weather in the area. We parked at a gas station at 113 and, not 114, I'm sorry, and 13 in North Manchester, and I saw that thing. And it finally came down. That's the first time I was in a tornado. I was both fascinated and freaking out.
Oh wow, that's what happens.
And the guy sitting beside me is a city slicker, and he's never even heard what a tornado was.
Yeah.
But then the first time that we ever chased, me and my husband and my daughter, we said, hey, you want to go see a tornado? She's like, ah! But she just screamed. She was loving it.
That's the safest way
But
as parents
I'm
to
going to
drive.
give you a picture from what happened at the end of the day. You would not remember it, but you liked it on Twitter years ago when I posted
I bet I'll remember it.
Okay, you'll see it, you'll know
Yeah,
it.
it'll click.
We are at the meet and greet, so we'll see you later.
Thank you. Thanks for
you.
coming. Never stop chasing.
I have a question for some of the younger kids in the audience. So we cannot drive yet, of course.
Yeah.
What do you suggest if we want to look at more storms? Because here, yeah, there's tornadoes, but there's not really tornadoes at the same time.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend for young kids who want to be able to see the weather like that?
Yeah, I would get Radar Scope, the app, and then you can start tracking them on radar and watch all the live streams of all the storm chasers out there. And then you can get your eyes on the storms right away and track them on radar and go back and forth between the streams and radar. And then you can learn how to chase before you get your driver's license. And then you can start chasing, with parents' permission, of course. So, yeah, or you can get them to drive. I would hammer them and try to get them to drive you around. And then you can use the Radar Scope app and navigate and get your eyes on some storms, and they can keep you safe since they know how to deal with hydroplaning and stuff like that by their age. So I would try to hammer them and get them to drive for you. That's what I did. Yeah, it didn't take me chasing it, but I eventually finally did it when I got my driver's license. But.
And I will admit, before I get off the mic, over summer I stayed up way past my bedtime just to watch the streams and see what was going on.
Well, you probably already know how to chase them, I bet. So, a few more years and then we'll see you out there, I bet.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Hi there.
Hi,
So I've never seen a tornado before. So what do you think is the most dangerous situation you've ever been in?
A lot of them aren't storm related. Like I've hydroplaned quite a few times. So gas station issues from the gas station food and burritos. So, but I was one time in the path of a tornado in 2017 in Canton, Texas. And I was in a regular vehicle, in a Chevy Yukon, GMC Yukon, and I waited till the very last second. I was a little unstable. I had just gone through a divorce, so I was trying to get a crazy, close shot of the tornado. Waited too long, and then I drove through the ditch to try to get out of it, and the traction control kicked in, and I fell down into the ditch. I was looking up at the sky as the tornado was about to hit me, and I thought I was in big trouble in that moment. But I told myself I'm going to try to get out of the ditch once, and if I couldn't, I was going to try to run as far away from the core as I could and find a drainage pipe or something. But I just tapped the gas, and it popped me out on the road, and I drove through the northern part of the tornado and turned around and saw it pass me, and somebody passed away that was parked right across the street from me on that one. But that's the closest that I think I've come, besides the spin and the suction vortex. But we've got full faith in the vehicle, so.
All right, thank you. Like the shoes.
I actually gave my shoes away at yesterday's event. That's why I'm in my sandals. Don't have a lot. I'm not a sock guy either, so.
Kim, we've got some folks here today from Howard County, and our county experienced the Palm Sunday tornadoes in 1965, the April 11th outbreak. We appreciate yes, we appreciate the work that you're doing, and we know that it will save lives, improve engineering, and we just think what you're doing is great, and you have to be brave to do what you're doing. Janice Thornton is here tonight. She wrote a book on the Palm Sunday tornadoes in Indiana, and we want to present you with a copy.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Janice. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, I've studied that outbreak extensively. Yeah, the double wedge, I think those were two sub-vortices of the same tornado instead of two separate wedges separated by the inclusion of a mode of sinking air.
Have you ever chased a double derecho?
Like back to back?
Yeah, like two double derechos at the same time.
No, but I've chased a lot of derechos, but a lot of times they're on the leading edge of a windbag, and stable air will kind of push them out, so it's hard to get one right behind it. But on that June 20 day, there were two supercells out in front of it. We chased those, and then the windbag came in with like 100+ mile per hour winds way behind it. And it had a rear inflow jet that extended way behind it too with extensive damage. I think it caused like $1 billion of damage to farm equipment up there. But I wish I chased the derecho in 2020, but I was down covering Hurricane Laura that day. But I wish I chased the derecho in Iowa instead of Hurricane Laura on that day. I think it had stronger winds.
Yeah, in 2022 it like hit like around Columbia City, Fort
The one here?
area.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what fascinated me.
Yeah, derechos are amazing. They're a mesoscale system too, like a hurricane, and they get embedded tornadoes within it. And a lot of times you'll get bookend vortices with a gust front. And there's a very fine line between that quasi-linear pattern and like a supercell storm, which also has an RFD gust front. That's kind of a bow echo with two gyres on either side.
Yeah, there was a farm that completely got destroyed.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they can create big winds, tornado-like vortices moving really fast. Yeah. A lot of times those tornadoes are moving so quick that they just look like a knife-like straight line wind image path, because imagine a vortex of 80 miles an hour that's spinning like a donut that's moving at 80 miles an hour. It'll have 0 miles an hour on one side of it, ground relative wind, and 160 on one side.
What was your favorite tornado to chase?
I have a top tier of them, but I love the ones in the Dakotas, the really big wedges that are almost stationary, that form when you get the outflow boundaries out there that destabilize. And we had a lot of those this year. I love chasing in South Dakota too, and eastern Wyoming, and working around the Black Hills. But I love Oklahoma and Texas as well, chasing down there. And up here too. I guess I like to storm chase everywhere. All tornadoes, so. Well, that June 23rd, 2007 one in Canada was pretty crazy. All the ones this year, really the last 3 years have been the most active tornado seasons I've ever chased. Thank you. Thank you.
How did you even manage to convince your mom to go storm chasing?
I had to surprise her with it, so she just landed in Oklahoma City. I picked her up and we just went chasing. But you just had to surprise her with it, blindside. So basically had to trap her in the vehicle and go storm chasing. But she loved it in the end, but that'll still be her last storm chase, I think. She didn't like the noise or anything. I think she liked the science of it all.
Hi, so I'm an Amazon delivery driver.
Awesome.
And I've been doing it.
Keep it pointed into the wind.
Oh, yeah. I've been doing it for about a year and a half now, and I've been delivering in all sorts of weather, and I've been called crazy by my customers. There was at one point where there was literally hail and wind everywhere, and I was running up to the front door with a package under my arm, and they were like, "Why don't you come inside? You're crazy. You're trying to, don't worry about the package." And I'm like, "I just gotta get this done." Ran to my van, kept on driving.
Wow.
So,
need an anemometer on there.
So, as two people that drive in literal fortresses of metal, what if I'm ever in a situation like that, where if I'm in the line of a tornado, or if there's a tornado in the area, and I'm usually like delivering in the country, so I'm nowhere, what would I do?
Do you have those adjustable shocks that like automatically adjust when you have wind or something in the Amazon truck, like those Sprinter vans?
It's
I know they're pretty high profile.
They have shelves on the inside.
Yeah.
But there's literally nothing. There's like side door, the front door, and the passenger door, and that's
I would try to outrun it then, even though you're not supposed to do that. But first, I would try to get out of there and outrun it and get to a position where it's moving across your field of view. Because most tornadoes aren't moving fast enough to where you can't outrun them. But if you can't and you're absolutely about to get hit by it, I would bury the Amazon truck in the ditch and don't exit the vehicle because you need that extra protection that the vehicle provides.
Right.
You can even do a purposeful side rollover in the ditch, kind of use the slope of the ditch and lay it down on its side. That's probably what I would do last second, just lay it down on its side. And
yeah, right, just to make out the things on good holds together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Reed Timmer.
Hi there.
I have a huge question. So I kind of want to start storm chasing already. Yes, I can't drive, but my father can, so.
There you go.
I'm actually planning on maybe building one. What would be better? Using the nice, clean, new Camaro we got? Or the rusted, a bit more old F-150 we have? And what should I do to it to make it like better?
Yeah. Are you going to turn it into a tornado interceptor or a storm chase vehicle?
Both at the same time.
Yeah, the Camaro is not a bad one because of its low profile and aerodynamic design. And we thought about making the Dominator 5 more like a sports car instead of a minivan.
Like a Batmobile?
Lower profile would be the key because the Dominator 3 is kind of vulnerable to a side wind. So we were, because of its high profile. So I'd like it to be a little lower profile, which the Camaro would offer, but I think it's rear-wheel drive, isn't it? So that would be a problem. F-150 I think is rear-wheel drive too, but you can put sandbags and stuff in the back of it. The key is to have good tires. You want to have good tires because then you'll hydroplane if you have bald tires. But yeah, I think you have advantages to both. So maybe just do both of them.
So can I tell you another thing? What was your first tornado you experienced? Because mine was just this, it might have been an EF0 where we got the damage, but it was an EF1 over somewhere else in Indiana, South Bend. And like basically for me, I have to get dragged down in the basement. And
me too.
Yeah.
I get back to the day, not anymore.
And the sky was green, which I knew a tornado was happening. It was windy like crazy. I came back up. My parents kept telling me, "Get away from the window. Get away from the window."
Your mom tell me?
And so what was your first tornado?
Yeah, I had a similar one in 1985 when I was 5 years old. But I don't remember seeing the tornado back then, but I remember the chaos of the situation. My dad was pulling us to catch minnows in a wagon, and my mom was yelling at him to bring us back to the house, and he just kept walking slowly the whole time, and he steady pace. And I remember the chaos of the tornado siren going off. But my first tornado was October 4th of '98 when I was a freshman at OU, my first semester there. During a big fall outbreak, I was looking east from Perry, Oklahoma, and saw 2 small ones next to each other. And then saw one on May 1st, '99, 2 days before May 3rd, that F5. It was kind of like a closed upper low that spun out there for a few days before it popped out.
Was it the Moore, Oklahoma EF5 that happened?
Yeah, that was my freshman year. So that was a big one, but I was obsessed with getting up close after that. So, because then you can see the tornado in 3 dimensions more. When you're far away from it, it looks like a painting sometimes, but there's definitely a middle ground where it's still safe and you can see it in 3 dimensions.
And thank you.
Thank you. Green is just like your shirt. Gotta watch out for that. That's from the suspended ice in the storm.
I just want to say you're a huge inspiration to me in like my journey with meteorology. You've inspired millions of people, and I just love looking up to you online and out in person. So I guess my biggest question for you would be, what is your favorite or best piece of advice or insight you've received in your journey with meteorology, and what is the best piece of advice or insight you would give to the next generation?
Yeah, that's great. I'm trying to... Way back in the day, Tim Marshall sent me a bunch of VHS tapes, and he was a huge inspiration to storm chase. I was like 10 years old, and I wrote him, and he started sending me tapes back of storm chasing, and watched that. And I think instead of the best advice is always when people show you how to do things instead of say don't do that or you can't do something. So definitely, I did get a lot of that though, because storm chasing wasn't a viable career path when I first started, and a lot of people said you couldn't do it, or it's not a part of meteorology, for example. But I did both. I went to school for meteorology and still did my PhD and did storm chasing at the same time, and then did it anyway. So I think that sometimes the best advice is to never stop chasing. Even if you're told you can't do it, use that as motivation to keep working harder. But definitely lean into the advice when people try to show you how to do things instead of not to do it. So. But watch out for hydroplaning if you're storm chasing out there. That's the biggest danger. And sometimes you got to get in a few spin-offs to figure out your limits when you're driving. But make sure your tires are in good shape, of course. But you got to get out and chase eventually if you're passionate about it. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have you ever seen a water spout?
I have. Yeah, I even saw it during a snowstorm. So I was covering a lake effect snow warning in western New York, down of Lake Erie, and I saw a base of a storm that was producing a bunch of snow, and then it had a cone come down, and I thought there was no way that's a tornado, but it actually reached down to the surface of the water and made landfall. I've also seen an EF4 tornado move over a pond that counts as a water spout. It created a big tsunami wall of water on the front of it near Canton, Oklahoma.
Have you ever seen an EF5 over the water?
No, I've only seen an EF4 over the water, but yeah, but I'm sure some of the EF5s that I saw probably passed over a pond and sucked the water out. But water spouts are interesting. You get a lot of them up on Lake Michigan during the fall because the cold air moves over the relatively warm water of the Great Lakes. So it's a good time to storm chase and practice going out there looking for water spouts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm interested in meteorology, but my only problem is forecasting. Is there anything that you recommend to help someone like me learn how to forecast?
Yeah, and it seems like when you go to school for meteorology, you don't really cover very much about forecasting. It's all mathematical derivations for 4 years and then a quick course at the end. So depending on what university you go to, there's a lot of universities that focus on forecasting specifically as well. But I had to be self-taught in a lot of ways. But I would start with the upper level trough, the shape that the trough makes, and start recognizing the shapes of them and the evolution of the trough. if it goes from like a positive tilt to neutral, negative tilt when it pops out of the mountains. Those are usually best. But you can also get subtle troughs, like during the Ridge Rider events, like in the Corn Belt in the summer, where you have just like a little jet stream. But you can go to pivotalweather.com or set any of those websites and start off at like 500 millibars or up to 300 millibars in the upper atmosphere and just start looking for pattern recognition with your upper level trough shapes. And I do a lot of live briefings too, going over that. And then you can go over your parameter space for severe weather, which is like CAPE and wind shear and things like that. But it all is related to the upper level trough shape for forecasting.
Thank you.
And low level wind shear too for tornadoes. So I would look for the gradients and parameters too. Usually like the gradients and instability produce the most tornadoes.
I gotta say, you should be a comedian.
Oh, thank you.
No, so I've seen Twisters.
I'm all rental car jokes.
Yeah. So of course I've watched hundreds of your videos on YouTube and stuff, and I really enjoy them.
Thank you.
So my question is, I'm sure you've seen the popular video online of the Gerald, Texas, 1997, the Dead Man Walking tornado.
Yeah, southeasterly mover.
How do you think that is? How does that work? Like, how are those?
Those are just suction vortices that are getting dragged along the ground, so they kind of have that lean to the legs and they kind of get that shape to them. I saw another Dead Man Walking tornado in Kentucky this year in May. That was happening, but you'll just get a multiple vortex tornado that's moving and it'll drag the vortices when it's moving kind of fast.
And also, one last thing I know you travel like a lot. How many miles do you think the Dominator has?
It has like 200,000 now, but it breaks down a lot. So that's why I've had to use rental cars and my personal driver, but I can't rent cars anymore. So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Was there ever a time where you almost stopped chasing?
No, definitely not. Yeah, it's never been a question in my mind about, because I love it so much, and so I've always tried to figure out a way. But maybe in 2006, I was a little worried about being able to do it for a career, because it's hard to make ends meet sometimes because the expenses are a little bit high with storm chasing. But then we had a big season in 2007, and then Storm Chasers started with Discovery Channel, and then social media started right at the same time. So I kind of got lucky in a lot of ways too. But now with social media in place and media jobs hiring storm chasers, and you can stream on social media. Basically, everybody's their own news network now. So there's a lot more opportunity now for storm chasers and for meteorologists too.
Also, do you live off of gas station food?
Basically, yeah, probably 70%. Mainly fats and protein, saturated fats.
Thank you.
But I've trained my body to need saturated fats. So how's it going?
Really good, I would say. A really good question. I always wondered, like those giant drones. I always wondered, can you deliver stuff with those, like probes, medical gear, to like a storm chasing situation?
You could, yeah. They do it for search and rescue. They use those big drones to drop supplies and to do infrared searches when they're doing recovery efforts and everything too. They'll launch the drone and looking for people that are in need and everything. And I bet pretty soon we're going to have drones large enough to carry us around, so we'll be able to use that to chase in. If there's a big traffic jam of storm chasers, you could use your drone to fly over top of it. Inspector Gadget wheels.
Because I want to make a vehicle called the DRV, Delivery Reconnaissance Vehicle. So basically it would be like, you know the doghouse?
Yeah, the doghouse from storm chasers?
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, like the big giant back area?
Oh yeah.
With the top, that's where like the drone would be landing.
Yeah, I think that would be a great device, and it can be used for search and rescue afterward, which is really good, helping out after the storm. And sometimes you have to chase and then start helping out right away in the middle of the storm. So you'd want a vehicle that can handle the floodwaters. Maybe you could do a hybrid vehicle that can handle the wind and can turn into a boat when it hits floodwaters, like those water car Panther vehicles.
All right, thank you, Mr. Reed.
Thank you. Keep thinking about it though, that's the key, and then eventually it just happens. You think about it enough.
follow up my son's question, what is your favorite gas station food? And then I'm gonna say something else if you don't mind.
Yeah, I like the Casey's breakfast pizza. Also burritos. Also burritos are good. Spicy chicken sandwiches are pretty good.
Yeah. But I think it's amazing this tour you're doing, and I'm 51 years old. You're a few years younger. I remember back before we had the internet. My son doesn't know that. Maybe some of the younger people here don't. But you had to plan to be home, to watch these shows.
Yeah.
And,
so we're very different back then.
And it's awesome to see what you're doing. Continuing doing what you love. I really feel like, truthfully, it's every chase, everything you see, it's like, oh my gosh, it's the first time. It's the most amazing thing ever. Your excitement, enthusiasm.
There's always something new right there. That's for sure.
He loves what you do and other people do, and thank you for going out there and doing that for all of us. So.
Thank you. I love it. So thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah.
And you guys should storm chase too.
Yeah. You know what? I have dents on our Supernator.
Nice. There you go.
But yeah, we had 2 tournament games today, so then we drove up here for Indy. So
thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. You guys had a big tornado just south of there last year. Greenwood, right?
Yeah.
I missed it. I should have chased that day, but last year they just kept starting the plains and pushing out to Indiana and Ohio over and over again. So they like to follow certain patterns within seasons.
So I hate to admit it, but I did study meteorology at Ball State.
Awesome.
And I don't think I realized the weather phenomena until the last couple of years about cold air funnels.
Oh yeah.
So maybe you could differentiate between the two, because we've seen that some of those, a couple of them actually, within the last year.
Yeah, and there is a fine line between a cold air funnel and like a supercell tornado from a low top supercell too. So sometimes cold core events are called that just because they have a cold upper system, but I think all upper systems in the mid latitudes are cold core. But when they get vertically stacked, when you get vertically stacked upper level low that's just sitting there and spinning, and the warm sector gets pushed off to the east and it pinches off the warm sector, that's when you get pure cold core funnels that are underneath convection based purely on the cold air aloft instead of the heat and moisture at the low levels as well. But sometimes you'll get the northern edge of the instability axis that wraps all the way up to an upper level storm system, and I think those are just supercell tornadoes, like low top supercells. But I think there's just a spectrum of things in nature, and we like to categorize things as humans into buckets. But
I did get to meet Tim Samaras.
Awesome.
Yeah.
He's a great guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he came in, he was in the middle of his engineering for the Lightning.
Oh, yeah.
He had this huge, I want to say camera or something that it
the
was
kahuna, big kahuna.
Slow motion, and that was that was probably 2010 or 2011. So just
Did he come to Ball State?
Yeah, the Ball State storm chasing team.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's awesome that Ball State does that for a class. So
yes.
I definitely prefer the universities that do that, because it's so important to be a field meteorologist in the learning process and see the storms and everything. I know Western Kentucky does chasing as well. University of Illinois does.
Yeah.
Northern Illinois, College of DuPage too. So a lot of good Corn Belt universities here for meteorology. I almost went to one.
It's few and far between. OU is obviously the best in gold.
Oh, I think they're all great. OU's gotten a little bigger and less focused on storm chasing, and they're even not allowing their students to storm chase anymore a little bit due to liability purposes. So, but they can still do it in their own time, of course, as adults. But
yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, me too.
I guess it's not removable because I don't like to bend over in front of people.
Plumber's crack.
Yeah, but anywho, I would just made a comment about I was 2 miles away when London, Kentucky got hit by a tornado.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, earlier.
That was a dead man walking tornado storm. Before that, were you chasing it?
No, I'm a truck driver.
Oh wow.
I chase miles, not tornadoes. And my actual question, whenever they start making the drones for people, are you going to volunteer?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we have our group, our TDSR volunteer group even too. And I work with the Cajun Navy a lot as well. We were in Helene last year, and I've worked with them since Katrina. That was when I met them, just after Katrina. So I work with those crazy guys down in Louisiana all the time.
You'll need to record that.
Okay, record what? Record?
Yeah, when you're in the drone.
Oh, and the drone. No, I haven't been flying in a drone yet.
Oh, you said there's something about like they're gonna make it for people.
Eventually, yeah.
Eventually?
I'll record that for sure.
Yeah,
I'm a little afraid of heights though, so someone else do it. The drone. I like to be on the ground.
Fair enough.
Thank you for coming out, everybody. I think we're going to do the meet and greet now after this. One more.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have a relationship with the National Weather Service, and do you share your data with them?
Oh yeah, we share it with everybody, and storm reports and everything. So I've got relationships with a lot of forecasters, and yeah, we've been reporting to the National Weather Service for years whenever we see a tornado. And we tried to publish our rocket paper in the American Meteorological Society journal, but they ran me through a 3-year peer review process and kept hammering the safety of it. And they said that it was too dangerous, but it's a toy rocket basically, an Estes rocket. And we had to go back and measure the distance to all the power lines and everything and prove that it was a legal launch. And then they declined it anyway in the end. So then we published it in the European counterpart of the AMS, and it got accepted in like 3 days. So I think I had a hater on the peer review score. I know I did. He wrote pages upon pages saying that posting to social media is not science and everything, but that's how you fund the science if you do it self-funded instead of using taxpayer dollars, I guess.
This is my Mother's Day present for my husband this evening. So.
Oh, happy Mother's Day. Yeah, thanks for coming.
I am curious, and you're the best one to ask, I'm sure. Is it a thing, truly, that they are looking at being able to stop a tornado that is already in action?
That is from the movie Twisters, definitely, but we're kind of trying to work toward that in secret a little bit, just by figuring out the three-dimensional structure of the tornado and mesocyclone first, and then maybe we can find a weak point in it. I think that vent right in the top of the tornado, if you could drop some liquid nitrogen in that or something in mass, you might be able to shut it down. But there was that tornado near Nashville that had the explosion near it when it hit a transformer and it decondensed the base of it. So you can definitely disrupt the thermodynamics with a tornado, and it's all based on a delicate balance. So it's possible you could dissipate one, I think. But you might have more problems, and being a legal dissipation method would be hard. Like you'd have to do an explosion or some kind of cold, yeah, I'm not sure how you do it. Maybe a hail suppression cannon. But you gotta try first before you can figure out if it'll work or not. But a big part of science is being reckless, with the scientific advancement. So.
All right, real quick. Why did you give away your shoes?
He just asked, and I have trouble saying no sometimes. So. Yeah, I'm a sandal guy though anyway, so the shoes were not a zero drop shoe, so they were kind of hurting my knees anyway. So. Thank you everybody for coming out. Have a shot tasting. We'll be back here at dinner next spring, or maybe a winter event. I'm just going to go use the restroom, and then I'll be right back out for the meet and greet.
Where is the meet and greet? I don't know.